So my name is Jake Vartanian. I was up here a little earlier, but I've uh, I've had the privilege of working on some IC or token launches in the token generation events in the crypto space over the past year, including Singular DTV, Token Card, and more recently Bancor. And it's been quite the experience, really watching these projects develop over time, and watching communities grow, as well as seeing the incredible influx of people who are now just starting to get involved and really interested in this space. And it's just such an exciting time to be involved, and it's great to be able to discuss some of these things with such a great group of panelists here, including Michael Turpin of the Transform Group, Dominic Zinus of Wings, Mitchell Lorio of Independent Consulting on some of the best projects in the space, and Kelly Weaver of Melrose PR. And so I guess you know, there's because there's so many projects starting to do these token launches right now. Where it's like, okay, get a website up, get a white paper, and in hopes of raising millions. I'd like to ask, like, why is it actually not like that? What makes it actually different than, and not as simple as it looks?
Who wants to go first? I'll go. Can we all hear me? Cool. Okay, so a lot of people have been watching all these ICOs and these token sales happen, and they've been looking at it, and they get so hungry to participate because a project will go live and they'll raise a gajillion billions or whatever it happens to be, and they'll think, wow, I could do that too. And people think it's easy, and people think it's as simple as it seems, but in reality, the work that goes into building a good token sale is extremely complicated, and it usually takes a long, long time. So all the early token sales that were not scams, and most of the early ones were scams, most of the ones that were not scams spent many, many months on every area of the business. So we have things such as the legal aspect. A lot of us have had to go talk to regulators directly. Santiment, for example, we had to go straight for FINMA. We were dealing with FINMA from day one. All the good projects, all the most responsible projects should be dealing directly with regulators themselves, trying to make sure things are smooth. That's not including branding, PR, explaining this kind of stuff, and of course the most important part is building a community. So a colossal amount of work goes into a successful token sale, even if it sells out in 7 seconds. And hopefully we'll get to touch more about that on the panel. Where do you want to take it?
I would add that a good analogy would be an iceberg. You see an iceberg and only the top 10% shows, and that 90% that you're not seeing is the reason why a Singular DTV sold out in 15 minutes. So the reason why Bancor was so quick. The best projects, and we worked on Bancor as well. I'm an advisor of Bancor. If you look at all these best practices, Evo's in the crowd from Addicts, they sold out in a couple of hours. They were working 6 months beforehand. They were building a community. They already had a reputation in the industry. They'd already decided. They chose a group of people to work with worldwide. They talked to the top people that go and fund the pre-ICO, which is very important. When you see something sell out in 15 minutes, it usually means that there was like about 30 or 60 days of people committing things, way in advance. And and the community aspect, can't be ignored. The level of advisors you have, the fact that you've got folks like Dominic and Wings to tell you have the right valuation, that you have the right people, with the escrow, you have the right law firms. It just gives the confidence. And then when that pre-sale goes in and has 10 million the first day, that's when all of a sudden the FOMO kicks in for the ordinary investors who aren't putting in the $50,000 minimums that the pre-ICOs are requiring right now.
And so, Dominic, along the lines of the Wings community stuff, like how has that started to unfold, and what do you see as like the main value components of this Wings? Is it the prediction markets? Is it the people in the community, or is there some other aspect that you tend to find being the most beneficial to the crypto community as a whole?
So when we thought about Wings was that we wanted a way for the community to sort of police itself, but also make recommendations. And so, the thing is that there's all these different projects coming out there now in different sectors, and the Wings is a little bit special because we're using people in the crypto space to tell us, is a project legit, and how much money should it get, right? Should it raise 10 million to achieve this goal, or does it need more, or does it need less? But for these other projects, it's about it's not just about raising money, because if it was just raising money, you can do Kickstarter, you can do equity crowdfunding, that sort of stuff. But it's also about getting that community for that project. So if it's a project for traders, right? And there's a few of those like CoinDash coming out now. They want to be able to get people in the trading community involved early on, so that they're stakeholders in that system, and they're adding value into that project.
Cool.
I want to comment on that. There's something I want to comment on. So there's this conception, again, that people can just go and raise money. But in a lot of cases, it is better to raise money through traditional means for a project, even with something that interacts with the crypto space. Just because you can do an ICO doesn't mean that's the best way to get funding and to get runway, which is a misconception I see a lot.
Right. But
Do you want to comment?
well, I was just going to say, yeah, that's true. But basically, you want, as far as us, like for example, Wings could never have done that, because if we just had, gone to a bunch of VCs, we would have, let's say, maybe 10 users, and that's not. I don't think right now we have people coming to us every week saying, hey, can we get evaluated? Can we use your system? Can we have these like 300-400 people evaluate our ICO? And if we just, and we know we have actually some VCs using it, but if we just had like 10 people, I don't think anyone would be coming to us.
So it seems like, and definitely from my perspective, and I'll have to ask the rest of the panel what they think, that ICOs or crowd sales of this kind are far more suitable for ecosystems or parts where the benefits of whatever service or the value should flow into the community. Right? Not strictly for a business, but I know you wanted to comment.
I was just going to say that coming from, I think some of the confusion may be coming from the more traditional press, who are, in fairness, just trying to wrap their heads around this whole thing too. On the front page of Wall Street Journal Online today was some headline to the tune of, out the door of IPOs and income, coin offerings like the new way to get your startup funded or the new way to get rich. And a headline from the New York Times a couple of weeks ago was around something similar. So I think, and they're trying to understand this concept and explain it to everyone who's fascinated by it so quickly. There's been just an explosion of interest in the past 2 months. So I think some of these headlines are leading to people believing that they can just throw a project up, throw a white paper up, and hire, an outsourced marketing team and be like, all right, go. And there's so much more to it than just, hiring one of us and assuming that everything's just going to happen for you overnight.
Kelly, do you see that as part of your role in this, when you take on a project, of making sure that some of the more, I'll say like the media outside of the crypto space does really understand and connect with the message?
What do you in terms of our own due diligence in taking on projects?
In terms of just understanding the scope of the projects and what they're trying to do, like a lot of these projects are very abstract to a lot of people who aren't either, or who aren't both tech savvy and finance savvy, and one or two negative articles can really create such a negative impact. So do you see that as like part of a service that you provide to make sure that a clear and consistent message goes out to the traditional media sources as well?
Absolutely. I think, as any marketer's role is to first make sure that the message is really clear, and making sure that these white papers are telling a compelling message, and the messaging is consistent. And we, often that's the first step in terms of the marketing efforts, is to clean up, the messaging from the internal side before even writing any content that goes out to the press.
And I guess this is for Michael. Since you've kind of been in this space for a few years now, how has it shifted? How have you really seen it kind of evolve since the earlier days?
Well, the earliest days, they didn't even call them ICOs. I think that acronym that the lawyers hate has really captivated the interest of sort of investors. And the first token sale, token crowd sale, was one we were involved with in 2013. It actually spun a lot of things off. Mastercoin, that was involved as well. And that literally, the white paper was very short. It explained that they were going to create a new coin. You put in Bitcoin and you send it to an exodus address where it leaves the blockchain and goes into their blockchain and creates a new blockchain. That was a very radical concept at the time. And I remember that under the disclaimers, it literally said, investing in cryptocurrency is a very risky enterprise. Investing in a new cryptocurrency based on top of another one is insanely risky. So if you don't understand that you're probably going to lose all your money, you better not touch this. It then went up 100x in the next 4 months. So, it's very interesting. But the next year, 2014, is when the phrase Bitcoin 2.0 came out. We worked on 5 crowd sales that year. MadeSafe was the first one that raised several $1 million and had a lot of FOMO attached. We ended up, sort of timing things. Conferences like this, I have a conference next weekend in Barcelona, Coin Agenda. Our conferences, and now all of a sudden, during 2015, I think you could throw a rock and not find 5 conferences. Now there's like, I think sometimes 5 a week. But, having the timing of being able to have messaging hitting right when your investors are making decisions is really key. So we try to have our clients look at the timeline and, don't announce something, the day after CoinDesk consensus. Do it a little bit before. And to be able to also just have a 3 or 4 month, period to do things. With MadeSafe, we ended up having it so that we got a keynote space for David Irvine to speak at Inside Bitcoins, which was one of the big shows of the day. Set up Forbes and the Wall Street Journal, and then they went out 3 days later and sold out in 5 hours, $8 million. So that was kind of the start of the FOMO thing. We launched Ethereum earlier that year. That was 6 months of going on the road. And I think what Ethereum did, I think better than almost anybody to date, was really build a community of developers, build a passionate community of people all over the world. So when they went out, it wasn't just the investors. It was like any developer you talked to said, yeah, this is the next blockchain. And, I think that was sort of where it came to where now you do have this kind of misconception that you can, I think the biggest misconception, then I'll stop talking, is that the expectation when I talk to people who don't know much about ICOs, they say, yeah, I'm thinking about 30 to 50 million. That was something that was an insane number to even talk about 18 months ago. And so I think that the expectation curve has to go down unless you're really doing a gigantic project. I think 5 million is great for almost everybody to be able to build these things on, unless they're doing something, at the level of a Bancor or at the level of an EOS, where they're really creating infrastructure coins, Eternity as well.
And I guess just open this up to anyone. Before taking on a project or deciding to work with somebody, what are some of the steps that you guys take to ensure viability as well as just general competency and everything from along that line of things?
I'll go first then. So as you know, I work on a variety of projects. I lead marketing at Steemit Inc. I ran the Santiment token sale, and I've worked on a bunch of other projects as well. I ran the Ardor token distribution and advised on a bunch of other projects like Byteball. You can go on CoinMarketCap and go down the list. Now, one of the things that I look for in a team is I look for maturity. And maturity means they understand what's the opportunity and what's the risk. So one, I want to see it in their documentation. I'll go through their white paper or whatever they have. What's the message that you have? What are you trying to share with the world? Why does this have value? Because it should have ideological value. It should be trying to transform things, not strictly to make money. It should be about something much, much bigger. It's got to be worth my time, my interest. The second thing is it has to be realistic and mature with regards to how they approach it. Have they done legal due diligence? Do they have their lawyer set out? Do they understand securities law? Do they understand the risks involved in going first and trying to innovate on this? Do they understand what the community is going to be needing from them? Like, there's no such thing as free money in the world. It's just who do you owe and what is it? So these are the things that I look for. And then I look for, well, how sharp are they? What's their particular backgrounds? Do they have good reputations? Can I do due diligence on them personally? These kinds of things. Always trying to find out who am I really dealing with and are they trustworthy? Because the irony is, in crypto, we're trying to work with all this trustless technology. Is this whole field runs on trust. Every part about it. So I'm trying to find the most trustworthy people with the biggest possible idea and the most mature way to implement it, and then say, okay, you've got something amazing. How can I help you make it a reality?
You know, I don't really advise projects that like you as far as a consultant, but I do advise them as part of the Wings team, and I've had a few of my own ICOs, and I would say that the important thing is the team dynamic, that the team has worked together before and they can somehow come to consensus on hard issues, and also that they have I mean, I've literally I've helped advise some teams that like literally they just said to me, we want to do an ICO. And like in a specific space, but they had like literally nothing more than that, you know. But the important thing is that you can see that they've worked together in the past, they've been successful, and that if you give them the sort of recipe, you know, to bake the cookies, their cookies are going to come out pretty good. So you know that's just if you. And the way you can kind of do that is you can challenge them on some ideas, because a lot of times when people think about blockchain stuff, especially if they've been engineers in some other field, they don't really necessarily understand like how to leverage where the blockchain is like really strong. And so if you can push them on that and show them like, look, you're doing that, it's just going to look like a security. You might as well just you know, make a security. Why would you go through all that stuff? And then they like the smart people will realize that, and they'll be like, okay, we can kind of reformulate this to add some real value, like the transformation that you were talking about. And that's when you, in my opinion, that's when you know you have a good team.
I was going to say, it's very reminiscent of the dot-com boom, when I literally, the agency that I ran in the 1990s during the dot-com boom, I literally had someone come in and I said, what's your product? And they said, our product is our IPO. We're adding .com to our name. It doesn't matter what our product is. And so that was pretty much when you knew that like it was getting a little bit frothy. Yeah. And I think there's a similar phenomenon going on with sort of the projects that are not great. You know, I obviously, you wouldn't believe the number of calls that we get, you know, from people who are like, and these are the ones that are referred, are like, okay, what's your product? Well, I want to raise $15 million to buy a baseball team. No, that's not an ICO. You know, it needs to either be an infrastructure play that can truly be disruptive, or something that's more in the app coin space, where you're taking an industry like Proppy's coming up shortly with real estate. You know, there's a number, and AdX with advertising. And I think that's the new wave now that you've got enough, you know, for the moment, not that there won't be more infrastructure choices that are being built out. You know, and then I think the next wave will be actual securities, when they're saying, you know, let's go and actually do this instead of an IPO. But not a dog park in Queens. I got one of those. Not a.
And so, Kelly, coming into this space, I guess what has like the learning process been like of kind of transitioning, or just adding in some crypto clients versus companies in other sectors of business?
Yeah, we've been around for a little over 5 years and did more you know, consumer products and lifestyle. Entered the blockchain space about 18 months ago from an enterprise solutions level, working with clients like Gem and MadHive. And then, you know, I think as this sort of explosive growth happened, I watched, you know, what Michael was doing with ICOs from a while back, and just the interest level has been insane. But having to, you know, going back to the last question, doing the due diligence, I think it's certainly been explosive, even since, I would say, since the Consensus Conference just, you know, a month and a half ago. I don't know if you guys have felt the same, but we get in every day and there's 4 or 5, 6 new emails from people like, we're thinking about starting or launching an ICO. As someone who's somewhat new in this space, our client Dow Casino has recently launched their first one. We have some about 4 or 5 launching in July and August, so we'll see how it plays out. But it's certainly been, the interest level is insane in terms of transitioning from our expertise, which was more consumer facing. I think that we add messaging that's clear and transparent, the ability to communicate this to people who may not be as tech heavy. That's one thing that we sort of pride ourselves on. And then it's been interesting because, like, from a traditional PR standpoint of pitching to press and being able to generate articles through traditional earned media is without a doubt more challenging in this space. I think there's so much noise that it's hard to get, let's say a full feature article on a client. It's certainly possible, but it can be challenging because you're up against so much. There are a lot of marketing opportunities within the space that we've discovered that are sort of pay for play. You don't necessarily need to allocate a huge amount of budget towards it, but there are some great news media channels that do get great distribution, like Cointelegraph, CryptoCoins News, the BTC media publications. They have huge readership, and for a small fee you can get sponsored articles and press release distribution. And so we've been using those tools, and it's not just all about the earned media. Some of the paid media can be really positive for these clients.
And so we're almost done here, but maybe we could run through everybody. And what's the one tip you would give to anybody here today who is looking to do a token launch in the near future?
You want to go first?
Sure. I think one of the key things that we've noticed, in our short period of time with this, is that the community management side is so critical. And yes, it's part of marketing, but it really needs to be an involvement not only from your marketing team, but from the founding team as well. I think that Slack channels should be used as kind of like an Ask Me Anything, and that the founding team should really be engaged with the community. That's, after all, one of the main reasons why you're using this vehicle to fundraise versus other traditional methods. So, really using that as a dialogue between your community. I mean, we've seen our clients learn so much so from their user base and their community that they've been able to, implement changes and, really think hard about, okay, what is it that we're going to bring to market, especially when these ideas are in early days. You can really learn a lot from the community, and I think that shouldn't just be an outsourced agency or a marketing arm. I think it should be a real team effort.
Yeah, to take that from another angle, when you're doing these kinds of token sales, your community is your product. Your technology, maybe it's exceptional, but probably not, in all honesty. Probably someone else is working on something similar in a different way. What really sets you apart, what's really going to determine whether you're making something excellent, is how your system interacts and connects with your community. How big is your network? What's the size and the quality of it? And how does that let you affect the world? Your community is your product. Your network is everything. And if your network isn't a major part of your token sale and is not the reason why you're doing it, you probably shouldn't be doing it, to be quite frank. So community is everything. Quantity of community is secondary to quality of community. And if you can get hundreds of high-quality community members towards whatever your particular goal is, you can move mountains in this space. You can do amazing things, but it's got to be about your community.
Yeah, I would add with that, when Wings did our backing campaign, and we spent a lot of time, actually we wrote our own bounty management application, because I had done bounty stuff with Mastercoin, and it was a real pain in the butt with like spreadsheets or whatever, and I said, okay, this time we're going to automate everything, guys, to make it super easy. And the thing is, we were able to get, I don't know, there was like 5 or 6 or 7,000 people using this app, like just doing things like writing articles, translating, making photos for us, liking our Facebook page, retweeting. And the thing is that by tapping into that community, we looked at the donations that we got, and something like 30% of our donations actually came from these people, because we did a little bit of tracking there also. So, that's a huge amount. And then we also then had these people, and we enabled them with like a referral program. So they got a very small amount. It wasn't they didn't even get 1%, but it was like some token amount they would get by referring other donors, and about 20% of the amounts that came in were from referrals. So, leveraging that community, it's really, really, really important.
I think a lot of it is just, first of all, build something that people will use and that is going to be relevant and is going to be scalable. Steve Waterhouse, who I think is in the audience, I've had him as a judge at prior coin agendas. He's going to be a judge at the one in Barcelona. Formerly with Pantera Capital for many years. He used to always, at the end of a judging thing, when back in the ancient days of 2 years ago, when people were building wallets and exchanges and actual profitable businesses and funding through VCs, he would lean in and say, how do you make money? Because a lot of these people hadn't thought about that. Well, we're cool and we're this and that. And I asked him at the party last night, I said, what's your new question? He's like, why does anybody need your coin? And I think that's the first question you have to ask is, why does somebody need your coin? And then if somebody does need your coin, 20 other people are going to make a coin just like it. Why are you the one with your community, with your management team? Are you going to have a foundation like Ethereum and then have lots of other companies like Consensus build around it? Or are you going to have like Factum, where you have the two as two separate entities, but you have a plan for building them? And Factum was a great example. Had a successful crowd sale, and then an even more successful sort of scaling of the company and getting backed by Draper Fisher and Austin Ventures. And yet you made more money if you put into the token sale because of the way that the market controls the dynamics. So that's really sort of the ethereal question of like, why do I want to do this? Once you've made that decision that you've got a community, that you've got a great product, that's when you have to really, I think, commit to a roadshow. You have to do a world tour. And, it can be a world tour if you're really connected, by getting on Skype and connecting everybody and getting into the different social media groups and someone like Domi could do a world tour in like five days because he knows everybody already. But if you don't, it's important to get advisors who do know everybody. They're the ones who are gonna hook you up with the Korean investors, even if you've never been to Korea. They're gonna connect you to places. And then the other thing is get out to events like this. And if you're going to be launching, say, 3-4 months from the time you have the idea, make sure that you go to at least one meaningful conference in Europe and North America and in Asia. And I think that really then powers your PR campaign, powers your social media. It's a building approach so that there is, when you end up rolling your pre-ICO millions into your first day, people actually know about you already, and you get a phenomenon like with Token Card, right? I mean, you have to actually raise your number from cap from 4 million to 12 because I think it already raised more money than that in the pre-ICO. MetalPay raised so much money in their pre-ICO, they said we don't need an ICO. So that's what you really got to concentrate is that bottom 90% of the iceberg, and then the top 10% becomes much easier. We've had a couple of clients where basically, we're planning on 30 days of, what are we going to do here, here, and here during the 30-day crowd sale, and then, Golem raises money in 19 minutes and they sell out, and Bancor was one day, and a number of, and then you basically just got Addix was a couple hours. At that point, you switch gears and say, okay, how do we do the victory dance? Gnosis was another one. And a lot of times the media, they'll sometimes wait until after the crowd sale, which is why the pre-sale is so important, because you want to make sure that people understand why you raised that money, what it's going to be used for. I mean, when Gnosis came to us, their big thing was about how do we differentiate from Augur? And we had done the Augur launch, so we kind of knew what the differences were, and were able to communicate that. And then when they raised it so quickly, we probably got 10 times the press afterwards. But that really helped once they started trading for it to pop instead of drop. And because it's not just an ICO; it's a commitment to build something that's going to last for decades.
All right, thank you guys.